basics. What does collaboration mean in the context of the modern office?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's exciting to be here. Nice to meet you all. I thought I'd start my answer to that with another question. It's kind of a rhetoric question. But what is the modern office, right? And so I think that's something that's interesting to debate. When we think about it, the traditional office space as we know it is changing. The traditional 9-to-5 job as we know it is definitely under the process of change. And so when we think about collaboration, the changes in collaboration are definitely being driven by some changes in industry around just how we work. So when we think about collaboration specifically, it's about, it could be in the form of a formal meeting in terms of boardroom with full conferencing capabilities. It could be an informal gathering in a huddle space around a digital whiteboard. It could be, a hosted video conference where somebody's like running that from their home office or from a coffee shop potentially, or maybe just kind of collaboration through a tool such as Yammer or Teams, where it's exchange of information and ideas through persistent chat. And so I think, those are kind of the things that we need to be thinking about and incorporating into our IT strategy. Those are the flexibility that we need to build into that to adopt our collaboration tools and approach to deal with those changes in kind of our overall approach.
Yeah, I would agree, Greg, and it's the disappearance of the importance of the physical workspace. We were at Quadbridge's office a couple months ago, and I was just blown away sort of by the way they've incorporated the physical space with the digital space to enable that collaboration. Also, collaboration to me, Greg, means getting out of email hell, right? We often think that we get in the morning, the first thing we do after we have breakfast and tinkle is check our email, and we get sucked into that. And getting out of that email hell into collaborative digital space, I think, is important. And one final note is collaboration means including everybody. And when we talk about including everybody, we talk about accessibility in collaboration. And think about the tools now that enable folks that have sight or hearing impairment that can now participate in meetings where before they couldn't. They were silent voices. So collaboration means the physical workspace sort of melding with the digital workspace across any platform, but also that human component, bringing folks in that may have special needs.
And so what would you say were the biggest technology challenges? And we can start from a software point of view.
Well, people didn't understand the cloud, and the cloud is what enables the collaboration. We were on a call earlier. I understand a few of you folks went to Morocco at some point. We have a call center in Morocco, and we were talking to the sales folks on the team this morning, and they're still having a ton of customers that are really concerned about moving to the cloud and moving their on-premises infrastructure. So I think it's absolutely critical first that customers understand that the cloud is what enables them to do all the great things Greg and I are talking about, sort of unleashing that ability to work anywhere, anytime, across any device. I know I'm not going to spill that. Boy, it's close though. So that's truly where it starts. Greg and I often work on financial documents. All we do all day is put together presentations and financial documents. It's fun. It's good times. But what we've been able to do is collaborate in real time, no matter where. I think you were in Italy a couple weeks ago, and you were still able to, give me real-time feedback in the document while sending emojis. That's the way we work together. It's not me sending Greg version 1, I'm getting version 2, Greg's working on version Delta, and I ask, what the hell is version Delta? Like, who's putting all of this stuff together in the final document? So getting out of that, back and forth and that inefficiency is all about where collaboration is going to and where the software has enabled that, in addition to the hardware, Greg.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. And so on the hardware side, I just wanted to kind of touch on a customer example. It's a customer that we've been working with for a few years called Goldcorp, a mining company in the west of Canada. In about 2016, they recognized that they needed to kind of update some of their internal tech. The mining space is fairly commoditized, and they realized that one area for them to kind of gain competitive advantage is to really get control of their IT spend and their strategy there. But they had a big challenge, right? Their workforce was particularly diverse. If you think about a mining company, they have executives at HQ, they have power users really bashing out some Power BI and working with intensive analysis. They have people on the road, they have field operators using heavy goods equipment, and then they have miners, right, who spend much of their daily life under the ground working. And so they actually formulated a project called the Connected Miner, leveraging a lot of what we see in the cloud in terms of Microsoft 365. But from a device perspective, they realized that the typical desktops and laptops that they've been using didn't meet all of the needs. And so they had to kind of go and develop a work style or a persona-based hardware strategy. And leveraging a product like Surface Go, leveraging a product like Surface Go, Pro, allowed them to build these work style-based hardware strategies and have people meet the needs of their everyday work while also kind of taking advantage of all the stuff that their cloud products have to offer.
Amazing. And so how is collaboration affecting when people are working from home? I know this is affecting the technology stacks you need, both on the software and hardware side, access to the cloud, but also touching on the security side. How do you give people ease of access while still making sure that only the people you want accessing your files are actually accessing your files?
Sure, thanks. That's a great question because security is the underlying sort of pillar, or it's almost a perception versus reality concern. When it comes to security, we feel fairly confident based on the latest Forrester reports that the security stack built into our productivity suite and that follows through into the hardware is top shelf. But we also know that there are customers out there that want to run third-party security as well, and that's cool too. So once we get the security discussion out of the way and people are convinced that the cloud is secure, and quite often we'll just say, the Department of National Defense is running this stuff and it's secure enough for them, so consider how important you are. And that usually gets a pretty good response. But being able to work from home is a wonderful thing. And you take a look in Toronto and you see these condos, people don't want to work from a 500 square foot condo, they want to go to a common share workspace. And the ability to do that through the software and hardware has come so far along. And a lot of the ability to have great productivity that comes through the hardware and software is also AI infused. I think Mark talked a little bit about artificial intelligence, right? And when I was with you guys a couple months ago, I was saying, artificial intelligence doesn't mean Rise of the Machines and Terminator. Sometimes it does, right? But when it comes to software and hardware, what it means is making our lives easier and helping us do our jobs smarter. So I think I showed you guys as well, we're having a Teams meeting and I put on background blur, right? So all of a sudden, I could be in an office with a ton of sticky notes that have the world's greatest solutions on the whiteboard. I hit background blur, and artificial intelligence is actually looking at the pixels in that particular image, isolating the background and blurring it for me. So, the ability to collaborate in that way with folks around the world on any device, right? Whether it's iOS, Mac, or Windows, of course, on any device, Surface, Surface Go, OEM devices, what have you. The ability to collaborate is so critical. I don't want to go into the office anymore. In fact, Greg, we're building a new office down the street here, and we don't even get offices. Maybe your pay grade does, but mine doesn't. No, I'm not getting a cubicle even. No. Right? So they don't even want us in the office anymore. Seriously, I don't even get my red swingline stapler. Like, I'm at home now.
And just to double down on the security message from Jared there, I think what's really interesting to know, not many people know it, at Microsoft we have about 3,600 cybersecurity professionals that are employed. And they're responsible for monitoring all of the worldwide kind of threat signals that come across. All of that information is captured. We use predictive analytics and AI in the background and make sure that we are proactively protecting our customers against some of the threats that are out in the marketplace. And so I think, security for sure is one of the highest concerns for us, and we're really investing heavily as a company to make sure our customers are as secure as possible.
And one thing about that, Greg, we often don't talk about the advantage that we have here in the great country of Canada, is we have data centers in Canada. And a lot of folks' concerns in our customer base, from what we understand, maybe you guys are hearing this too, is where is my data? Well, your data is in Canada. It's either in Toronto or in Quebec City, and for redundancy purposes, it's probably in both. So that often gives a lot of our Canadian customers, I don't think we talk about it enough, that we have these two data centers, so these, your customers can feel fairly confident, or very confident, that their data at rest is in Canadian data centers.
So what are the collaboration implications for the IT department beyond the obvious software that actually enables the collaboration? Does it require extra Wi-Fi, higher signal strength, switches? What else do they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, so from a hardware perspective, I think some of those things would be what I would consider to be kind of the standard, right? In terms of you think about networking, you think about bandwidth, you talk about Wi-Fi coverage. But really, I think the next round of considerations is how do you manage your devices and how are you deploying them? And so when you think about can we incorporate tools like SCCM or Intune to make sure that we're covering devices across a number of different operating systems and securing them in the background, can we take advantage of deployment features such as autopilot so that we can do low-cost deployment, low-touch deployment, pull cost out of the IT system because custom images are no longer required? And so I don't know in the room here how many of you have heard of autopilot. Is something that you're familiar with? No? Okay, so it sounds like we need to go do some education on autopilot. It's a fantastic service. It comes across all Windows devices. And so we should probably get some information out there about that for sure. And so that's that. Do you have anything to add, Jerry?
Yeah, you're right. Those things are becoming far less concerning. When we're doing, I was working with some Teams engineering folks, right? Like these are folks that, like Goodwill Hunting, with the whiteboards, it's like, holy shit, what's on that whiteboard kind of people. And they were explaining to me, and I finally understood after about an hour, that everything they do in the software is actually built to scale through low-band Wi-Fi, right? So they actually develop the products for the lowest common denominator. So if I'm conducting a meeting with Greg in Starbucks, and I'm sitting in Starbucks with my background blur so he doesn't know really where I am, the thing sings, like there's no latency. So I think the days of being concerned about that, we should always be concerned about that, but it shouldn't be a barrier anymore. The world is ready for this kind of stuff. And when we built this stuff, one last thing, just another plug here, is think about Skype, right? Skype was scaled and built for massive consumer audiences back in the 90s and early 2000s. And when we purchased Skype, we purchased that intellectual property that enables us to sort of scale these products into massive pipes around the world.
The other thing that I would add, just in terms of when we're thinking about collaboration and planning for it, is an integrated collaborative solution requires integrated planning. And so when you saw us announce the Surface Hub 2S product earlier this year, on stage with our Chief Product Officer, Panos, was the CEO of Steelcase. And Steelcase is a close partner of ours. They help to build the stands. But also they have a whole range of office furniture. And so, it takes additional forethought, but as we're looking to move into new office spaces, we should be proactively thinking ahead of time, how do we make sure that the collaboration spaces here are one that fit the needs of our company? Are there enough huddle spaces? Are there enough small meeting rooms, large meeting rooms? Are there enough phone rooms? And so that really is a lot of foresight and ahead planning, but that's something that we should be thinking about for sure.
I mean, Greg, we're not coming in and doing the same TPS reports every day for 2 years, right? We're on a project, we move on. You're on a project, you move on. And you have to facilitate that type of work, right? We're not hired to do one job anymore and work with the same group of people. Next week I'm working with another group for a closed period of time. And that's what's happening as the next generation comes up. So we really want to make sure that physical space and the digital space really does come together.
Yeah, I totally agree, Jared. I think one thing that's interesting is that there's a plethora of studies out there around collaboration in the workplace. And what it goes to show is that employees are most engaged when they can complete the task that they want to complete from where it suits them best. Whether that's kind of like working at home on a focus product or working in a huddle space if we need to do some team collaboration. And so absolutely, I think that there's as our workplaces change, we need to build that into our thinking.
So how do you think this changing technology is affecting the dynamics in our workspaces, and in turn, how the changing in those dynamics is affecting the technology that we need?
I think people are happy with these types of tools. I know that, anecdotally speaking, last year at this time, our CEO said we're turning off Skype and we're turning on Teams for 100,000 users in 3 weeks. Tough shit, learn it. I mean, that's what happened. Literally, they turned it off and we had to learn it. And some people were worried, but once we embraced it, we realized I can work anywhere now and I can pick up my kids if I have to, and I'm happier for that. It enables me to make choices. And when you marry that with modern hardware, I remember going into the office only 3 years ago, and I would turn on my PC, go get a coffee, come back, the PC would still be booting up. I'd get rid of what I drank, come back, and the PC would still be booting up. It was a miserable experience. Now we can boot up anywhere, anytime. We're saving literally, I think, 2 hours a week of lost productivity time, and add that up, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time to make me happy. So I think people embrace it once they get used to it. It's still some pretty scary shit, though, for some people. But I think once they embrace it and get over that hump, they end up being more productive and happy because it enables them to work anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had an interesting conversation with somebody I was interviewing for a job recently, and they were telling me about the perks of their existing role. And they were actually quite happy by the fact that they can go to the gym during the day. Typically, you know, what we would consider to be our 9 to 5 work slot, they'll go to the gym, they'll work out. They will get their work done either in the evenings or on the weekends. And so as we're, you know, that is the environment that we're moving towards. That is the environment that we need to build our collaboration tools to meet. People want flexibility and they want mobility, and I think that, you know, they're embracing it, and that the technology that we're deploying has to make sure they support that.
And they want out of email hell.
I heard that.
So on the hardware side, with so many options, what are the most important points to consider when deciding what kind of collaboration tools are good for your company and your teams?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's more options than ever. There's no question. I think the first thing to do is really to take a look at your existing infrastructure and how can we take advantage of investments that you've already made. If you're running Microsoft 365 inside your environment, how do we interoperate that with a bunch of other operating systems? Do we have devices that are taking advantage of the advanced features such as Windows Hello or inking? The second thing, and this is one where it's really philosophical, it's what is the experience that you want to deliver to your end users, right? Jared touched on accessibility earlier. And you know, Microsoft as a company has been through an accessibility journey. We are making sure that we design products with accessibility in mind. But the learning that we've had on that journey is that by designing for accessible feature sets, it's actually just an investment in natural user interface design, right? And so we are now building products. If somebody wants to interact with a device through their voice only, they should be able to. They want to do it through inking only, they should be able to. They want to do it through a combination of mouse, keyboard, and touch, they should be able to. And so, as you know, as IT teams, we need to be thinking about what experience do we want to deliver to our users. We should be taking advantage of all of our existing investments, and with that in mind, then we can start thinking about the pieces of hardware that we want to deploy.
And of course, the same question on the software side. What are the real points that you need to think about before making the plunge and deciding what it is you need to be using and what considerations are most important?
Yeah, that's great, and I know there's a lot of customers here as well as Quadbridge. It's not a licensing discussion; it's a needs discussion. It's making sure that you have the right piece of software in the hands of the right work function or persona, if you will. It's not about Office 365 E5 for everybody, because that's overkill for some folks that might be in the front line. So how do you take a look at your environment and say, okay, in my environment, I want to make sure that we're connecting and collaborating with the folks in the mines or on the plant floor. That's a very lightweight, what we call a frontline SKU, first line SKU, and making sure that that persona is activated against that software set on the right device. And then taking a look at management and what their requirements are, and perhaps they do need the additional functionality and extra security built in, and a beautiful Surface laptop or Surface Book. Too. So it's not a vanilla discussion. It's a cost-benefit analysis based on persona. And I think the customers and the organizations that actually get smarter about that in the long run will be far more efficient and actually save money and sort of right-size the software versus the hardware.
All right, fantastic. And next, what are the major revolutions happening right now in the technology that we use in our conference rooms?
I mean, there's huge strides forward. I would say the first thing, and just going back to the integrated planning comment that I made, is I think there's a real focus on making sure that the collaboration spaces that we're building provide our users with the ability to collaborate properly. We've seen plenty of studies, again, by Steelcase is one partner that does it, that shows the importance of being able to kind of stand up, to kind of get into a meeting, really collaborate and be engaged in that. We're leveraging advancement in hardware to make sure that the user experience for remote participants mirrors or is as close to mirroring the same experience as being in the room, and that's really important. If we want engagement across all of the participants in the meeting, they need to feel like they're part of that meeting themselves. We see cameras on the desktops, obviously, that with video. With my team meetings now, I mandate that video is always on, just to make sure that we can see the engagement. You can look at people's eyes. You can make sure that they're participating, that they're listening. Surface Hub, obviously, is a fantastic collaboration device. We've seen here that the stand that we have makes it completely mobile. We can move it around. There's an onboard battery option that means you can unplug this thing and move it throughout the office so that you can continue to collaborate no matter what space you're in. Outside of that, I would say that from a hardware perspective, we just need to continue to push the boundaries forward, making sure that we take advantage of features such as digital whiteboard, which kind of transcends the device that you're working on as well. And so those are really important features from a hardware perspective. I don't know, Jared, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, it's important. The software, specifically our platform is every day, it's actually artificial intelligence is driving this stuff, right? So when Greg mandates video for his team meetings, we actually mandate closed captioning. And again, it's built right into most of the stuff that a lot of our customers are buying. And it's the speed at which artificial intelligence is going to make the software better, smarter, and stronger. But more philosophically speaking, it goes beyond the hardware and the software. It goes to the heart of change management. The tools are fantastic, whether it's the hardware or the software, but it's the ability for our customers to sort of embrace this new culture of work. It's great to have the latest iPhone, but are you using its full capability? It's great to have the latest software and hardware with the Surface Hub 2 and Microsoft 365, but are you using it to the full capability? So I think that's an important step we need to take and make sure that our customers and partners understand that there's actually an emotional change management piece that needs to be managed along with the speed of the hardware and software innovation.
Actually, something you just said jogged my mind. The new culture of work is something that I think is really important for us to focus on for a bit. At our Worldwide Partner Conference in July, we had Unilever on stage talking about how they've used digital technology to transform their operations. They've made investments in Microsoft 365, Power BI, predictive analytics, and as you would expect through that, they've seen improvements in production quality and yield. But one of the areas that they were most happy with out of that is the increased collaboration that they've seen across their plants and factories worldwide. And that is because they've embraced the opportunity to transform their operations and really build a new culture of work centered around collaboration. So now their factories, they can use teams to collaborate, exchange ideas, best practices, help problem solve. And so they're really happy about that. The companies that we see embracing transformation and using that to establish this new culture of work are the ones that will get ahead in the future.
I too often see when we go into some smaller companies that, well, the owner is an old man or an old lady and they don't want to use new technology, but you can't think that way. You've got to think about the 5 generations in the workforce and what's important really on the first line, front line. So quite often we face that resistance to embrace that change.
On the flip side, we often see a lot of pressure coming down from the C-suite, from management, about transforming the business, modernizing the business, revolutions in technology, and these are all big buzzwords that everyone's throwing around. But when it comes down to it, what do you think is the important considerations?
Yeah, I think we just touched on them, right? Which is we need to make sure that we're embracing transformation to instill a new culture of work. When you think about employees and their engagement, a number of companies right now are heavily investing in building this culture. At Microsoft, it is one of the things that Satya continues to talk about, the importance of company culture. Companies are recognizing that employees are one of their most critical resources, and an investment in collaboration tools will help them to be successful. When you think about an engaged employee, it's an employee who can complete their daily tasks without complication, that can get their work done and understand how that connects to the overarching results of the company and the mission itself. We know that there's studies in the US recently that have showed 80% of millennials will actually consider the technology deployed in a company before making a choice to join them. 42% of people will actually consider leaving a company if the tools that they use don't satisfy their needs. And while that's a bold statement, I think it just goes to show that they need to be able to get their work done, complete their activities, and have the right tools. Otherwise, they become disengaged and dissatisfied.
So, addressing a room full of IT decision makers, what do you think are the most important things that they need to keep top of mind when making the decisions about the hardware and software tools that they're using in their collaboration?
I would say that in a time when attracting and retaining good talent is at its hardest point in time and possibly the most important point in time, that collaboration tools will set up this new culture of work that we've been discussing and help companies to really move forward and maintain a competitive advantage. I think if you don't have the tools deployed across your organization to allow your employees to be successful, it's gonna result in employee dissatisfaction and then that from there we lack productivity.
Yeah, and in addition to that, it's making sure that we all understand our line of business requirements within the environment. There was a time when decisions and budgets were held within the IT departments, and for the most part, from what I understand, there's still considerable dollars there. But I know that the line of business folks also put pressure on the IT department to deliver very quickly applications and SaaS applications that end up sort of in that shadow IT world that we need to maintain as IT pros, or at least be aware of and get under control. So I think it's important that IT decision makers really understand the line of business requirements, whether it's the finance function, marketing function, sales function, and really get those ideas from the outer ring in and understanding those needs rather than pushing out what they believe is the right answer. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's about collaboration and making sure the business end-to-end understands what the end game is.
Well, we're coming to the end of our panel, so are there any last points you really want to make sure that everyone is aware of and hearing about? Last words?
I think the struggle is real. There is definitely a tension that exists between what our users are craving in terms of simplicity, mobility, flexibility, versus what the IT promises to the business, which is how do we deliver security, compliance, how do we manage all the devices, and at the same time try and reduce cost out of the system. My final thought would be, got a great partner here in Quadbridge who can be a trusted advisor to you. Microsoft, we're open as well to kind of help guide you through it. And so there's a number of critical decision points that you face over the course of the coming few months, but really use this and leverage this to kind of help answer some of those questions and guide you forward.
I would agree, and make sure that there are areas of the business that are getting more complicated, and rely on a trusted partner like Quadbridge to be able to assess the environment end to end. And things are moving so quickly that sometimes it does take that Quadbridge to help you along, so you're up to speed and making sure that your employees are getting the best experience. I mean, the best advice I think we can give is embrace the cloud. Embrace the cloud, empower your employees, and let them do their best work on their best devices anywhere, anytime, across any platform, and the business results will follow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, it's Greg Bond joining us from the hardware side, and it's Jared Bernatt from software. Thank you both so much for joining us today.